OK, picture the scene. You're a British royal, thousands of miles from home, going through arguably one of the most painful public moments of your adult life, losing a years-long legal battle over your own family's security, admitting on camera that your dad won't talk to you. And within about 48 hours, your heartbreak has become a hot topic segment on daytime American television, sandwiched somewhere between celebrity gossip and whatever Sarah Haynes had for breakfast. That's not a knock on anyone involved, by the way. That's just modern royal life in a nutshell. Your therapy session becomes someone else's Tuesday programming block. Welcome to the crossover episode Nobody Scripted. Buckingham Palace meets the ABC studio, and somehow everybody showed up with opinions.
Now, are the royals worth the money? Call us 0207-862-2222. King Charles has become the first monarch to publish his accounts. We've learnt the royals will no longer live in Buckingham Palace. That's a big story, even though it's undergoing a big £369 million renovation. We've also learnt their public funding is going to double. So lots come out today. They receive a sovereign grant from the Treasury, which pays for running costs and official work. The core funding was just shy of £52 million in 2024 and 25. In 27 to 28, that goes up to £100 million. Is it worth it, David?
Yeah, remembering that I think the royals bind the country together. We talked earlier about how awful the politicians are currently. And if you look at the instability on the political stage, the one thing that we do have is constancy from the monarchy. I like that. Also, the Commonwealth is a third of the world's population.
Yeah.
And it's worth remembering that the monarch is also the head of state of the Commonwealth as well. So, but
Those are all good reasons, Maria, whatever it costs.
I feel like they're all terrible reasons. They bind us together. They really don't. I don't understand how this country, by the way, the Republic, you don't have to go to that. They just don't need to take this much money from us.
But explain why you disagree with the first point. They bind us together.
They don't bind us together because so many people look at this, especially the younger generations, and see this dysfunctional family. I mean, Prince Andrew, for one, who essentially are benefit claimants and tax dodgers. And I can't believe that we point the finger and it's people like beneath us, apparently. But when it's people up there, we go, oh, it's fine. Take our money. I'm sorry, let me finish this point. This is a family who've got 4 revenue streams going in. They've got these 2 medieval duchies making millions of pounds. They don't pay corporation tax. They don't have to pay inheritance tax. They don't pay income tax on the Crown estate, which is money they get. It made a profit of over £1 billion last year. These are our coastlines, our seabeds. Like, why are they taking then a big chunk? It's going up from 12% to 20.5%. And then, on top of that, this sovereign grant, that is taxpayers' money, that is going up to £100 million a year. I'm sorry, the idea that it's for every £1 you get back 5, nonsense.
So the
in Versailles, they don't have a royal family.
Is a proportion of their money being returned to them,
That is correct. And also the sovereign grant was brought in 2012, I think it was, and it basically consolidated many income streams. And when you look at Buckingham Palace, for example, it's not really a home, it's an office. And that is...
I'm sorry, David, how are you justifying this?
What?
How are you justifying the doubling of the sovereign grant in 3 years to £100 million?
Because the sovereign grant is also used for upkeep of those buildings.
Which they're not even going to live in. Open it up. Make it a public building. Open it up to the public.
But if you read the papers, that is exactly what they're doing. So Buckingham Palace is now open, and they are opening more of Buckingham Palace to the public. The garden parties. I want to ask you, if people don't like the monarchy, why is the Mall full of people when there are royal occasions? What about the state opening of Parliament? What about all these really important...
I'm sorry.
Would you get rid of the state
I'm not
opening
suggesting.
of Parliament?
I understand there's something in this country people like a royal family. I think that number is dwindling. But I am sorry, I dispute, and I don't understand how anyone watching this can dispute. So when we're talking about schools, we can't afford air conditioning in our schools, for example.
Would you abolish the monarchy then?
We can't afford prison. We can't afford prison spaces. We've got rapists going free. And yet, yes, exactly. It's about choice. So why on earth are we giving them so much money, and why don't they pay income tax, corporation tax, inheritance tax?
Just on the inheritance tax thing, if you charge the royals inheritance tax, you wipe them out, don't you? Because the bill for those castles and palaces and everything else would wipe them out. So I don't.
Then it's not a viable business, is it, Jeremy?
Well,
it's not a business.
Well, then that's
it's the firm. It literally is a business. What do they exist for?
No, listen. If you want to do that, the best way, if you charge them inheritance tax, you wipe out the family. But that might be a way of doing it cleanly. Mary in Belfast, hi.
Oh, hello.
What do you think about this? We're just discussing whether the royals are worth the money.
No, they're not. If it was a politician or a civil servant or somebody who's working in a private company, we would do a performance review on them, whether or not they are worth the money that they are paid. Shaking hands, unveiling a plaque, planting trees doesn't justify that expense.
Would you have said the same when the Queen was alive, QE2?
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
you were against it even then?
Yes. Well, it's not that it's not about saying that you're anti-monarchy. It's about looking at it and giving it the performance review. I mean, what exactly is the return of investment with them? When we paid...
Well, David has an answer to that.
5 times.
I don't
he
believe that at all. I don't think you can attribute that to people. You look at the palaces of Versailles, we know what happened to their royal family, and they bring in as many, in fact, more tourists.
What, the Palace of Versailles has more visitors? Yeah, France has a lot of people visit. That's true, Mary, yeah.
Size as well.
What's that?
France is 4 times the size of ours.
Right. Mary?
Can I also say, like, when William went to Saudi Arabia, that cost us £130,000. What exactly did we get from that? What was the benefit to the
So the
people of
royals are
the UK?
used as trade tools, aren't they, by the government? So these royal visits are at the bequest of the government. And so when you're signing free trade deals, we've signed 70 FTAs in the last few years, that's where the royal family come in. They are used as this kind of sort of social fabric, the niceties to get those deals over the line.
OK. Mary, thank you.
I have a huge issue with the amount of money the public funnels into them, and also why this feudal idea that goes back centuries. Why do they own Regent Street, our coastline, our seabed, our wind energy, our farmland? It's ridiculous. Look at the state of the country. All this wealth hoarded in this one family because of what?
Stephen, Aberdeenshire, hi.
Hi, no chance. They're not worth the money, not at all. And something that you kindly said, that they go abroad and they do X, Y, and Z to bring in money for the country. Mm-hmm. You just have a wee look at what the Tartan Army is doing for the football and what they're doing and how folk want to come to Scotland. I think there's other things out there that are actually doing more for this country, and where revenue is being created for London with the amount of tourism and everything that's isolated to that area.
Okay, good point.
You'll find very, very few tourists that go to Buckingham Palace and so forth will actually venture out with, especially coming up to Scotland.
Yes, a good point. Yeah, it all goes to London. And you're saying, I missed the point, did you say the football is bringing in more?
Well, no. If you have a think about it, because I don't know if you follow the feeds or not, Jeremy, but there's been quite a lot of Boston American people. The way that the Tartan Army is going along with the cone, yeah. I don't really, what have you. What they're doing is, they're on about the Boston lot are saying, right, fine, we're going to go to Scotland, we're going to see how this works.
Yeah, they love you. And it does, I know what's happened on the field has been, let's say, problematic, but the fans have been amazing. I love to see it. Thank you, Steve. Good point.
Let's start. Hey, welcome back to Royal Truth Desk, the channel where we take these sprawling royal meets pop culture moments and actually sort through them properly, instead of just clipping the most dramatic 10 seconds and calling it a day. Today, we're talking about Prince Harry's now famous BBC interview, the Ravex security ruling that triggered it, and because apparently this story needed one more layer, the fact that it became a full Hot Topics discussion on The View, featuring Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Hostin, Alyssa Farah-Griffin, Anna Navarro and Sarah Haynes, all weighing in like it was their own family reunion gone sideways. If you enjoy it when we take the scenic route through a story instead of the 5-second TikTok version, go ahead and subscribe now, because we've got a lot of ground to cover and honestly a genuinely good cast of characters to get through. Let's set the actual scene first, because context matters enormously here. Harry sat down with the BBC's Nada Tawfik right after the UK Court of Appeal dismissed his case over Ravex, the committee responsible for deciding senior royal security, which had downgraded his automatic UK police protection back in 2020 after he stepped back from royal duties. The court ultimately found the committee had actually diverged from its own usual policy in making that call, which is a genuinely interesting legal wrinkle buried underneath all the emotional headlines. And Harry, visibly raw about the whole thing, said plainly that he was devastated by the loss and dropped one of the more quietly devastating lines of the whole interview, admitting he doesn't know how much longer his father has, adding that Charles won't speak to him because of the security dispute specifically. He also didn't hold back on the Ravek decision itself, calling the whole process an establishment stitch-up, a phrase that predictably launched about 400 follow-up news cycles on its own. And in the middle of all that, he still landed on the same note he's hit in previous interviews, that he'd love reconciliation with his family, that it's entirely up to them whether that happens, and that some relatives, in his words, may never forgive him for writing his memoir. So, to summarize the vibe of this interview in one sentence: genuinely emotional, legally substantive, and absolutely built to be quoted everywhere within the hour. Mission accomplished, apparently, because 2 days later, 5 women on a couch in New York were unpacking it in front of a live studio audience. Now, here's where things get genuinely fun to watch, because The View's Hot Topics format has this wonderful chaotic energy where 5 people with 5 completely different professional backgrounds all get 60 seconds to process a British royal family crisis in real time, live, with zero rehearsal, and somehow it usually works better than it has any right to. Ana Navarro, notably, didn't stay in commentator mode for long. She actually pivoted the conversation into something a lot more personal, talking about her own estrangement from her own father, saying she misses him, that he probably misses her too, but that taking that first step is just genuinely difficult and takes real processing. That's not really royal commentary anymore at that point. That's just one human being recognizing a familiar shape of pain in someone else's very public story, which honestly might be the most relatable part of this whole segment. And then Whoopi, because of course Whoopi had the line of the segment, closed things out with what's basically the thesis statement for the entire estrangement genre. Say what you need to say to people while they're still around, especially when they're mad at you, because that's exactly when it actually needs saying before you run out of time to say it. Which, look, whatever you think about the royal family drama specifically, is genuinely solid, universally applicable life advice, delivered with the kind of no-nonsense warmth Whoopi's built an entire career on. So here's the actual interesting question buried underneath all the royal drama meets daytime TV novelty of this whole thing. Why did this particular interview generate this particular reaction on this particular show? And we think the honest answer is that it stopped being purely a royal story the moment Harry made it about something almost universally recognizable. An adult child watching a parent age, wanting to reconcile before it's too late, unsure if the door's actually still open. That's not really a story about titles, palaces, or police protection budgets at its emotional core. That's a story about family estrangement, which happens to be wearing a very expensive, very photogenic royal costume on top of a genuinely common human experience. And that's exactly why it translated so easily onto a couch full of American daytime hosts who've got zero personal stake in British constitutional matters, but plenty of personal experience with complicated family relationships of their own. Let's actually get into the substance for a second, though, because there's real, legitimate policy debate buried underneath the emotional headlines, and it deserves its own moment separate from the "wow, that was a lot" reaction. The Ravek dispute genuinely isn't just about hurt feelings. Harry's argued that the removal of his automatic protection functions as a form of leverage, effectively pressuring him to accept certain terms if he ever wants full security restored. And he's warned that the precedent set by this ruling could discourage other senior royals from ever choosing a different path in life, since doing so might now mean accepting reduced protection as the cost of leaving. That's a genuinely substantive constitutional and security policy argument, regardless of how you feel about the family drama wrapped around it. Meanwhile, the court's own reasoning suggested the original committee had sensible reasons for its approach, even while acknowledging it deviated from typical procedure, which is exactly the kind of nuanced legal outcome that gets almost completely flattened once it turns into a 5-word chyron on morning TV. And that flattening effect cuts both ways, honestly, because it's part of why the security dispute and the family rift keep getting talked about as though they're the exact same issue, when they're actually two separate, if deeply connected, threads. The security question is a legal and policy matter with actual court rulings attached to it. The relationship with King Charles is an emotional, personal matter that legal rulings can influence but can't really resolve on their own. Harry's own words tie them together directly. He said outright that the security issue is specifically why his father won't speak to him. But that doesn't mean solving one automatically solves the other. You could theoretically win every future legal battle over security and still be facing the exact same emotional distance with your father, because court rulings don't really do reconciliation. People do that part themselves, in their own time, on their own terms. Which brings us to William, who, notably, wasn't really part of this particular news cycle at all. No statement, no comment, nothing on record responding to this specific interview. And we think that's actually worth sitting with rather than glossing over, because silence in these situations tends to get read very differently, depending on who's doing the reading. Some people interpret William's continued lack of public comment as its own kind of statement. Distance, unresolved tension, a brother who simply isn't ready to engage publicly on this. Others would argue silence is honestly the more mature, more private response compared to relitigating a family rift on daytime television, and that not every family member needs to weigh in every single time this story resurfaces. Both readings are reasonable. We genuinely don't know which one's closer to the truth, and neither, frankly, does anyone doing hot takes about it from outside that specific family. Diana's shadow looms over basically all of this too, even when nobody explicitly names her, because Harry's entire relationship with security, privacy and media scrutiny traces directly back to watching what happened to his mother. When he talks about risk, threat and duty of care in the context of his own family now, that's not abstract policy language for him. That's a man who grew up on the other side of exactly the kind of media pursuit that ultimately contributed to losing his mother, now trying to make sure history doesn't rhyme quite that closely with his own kids. You don't have to agree with every argument he's making in this specific legal dispute to recognize that particular through line isn't performative. It's about as real and consistent as anything in this entire sprawling family saga. So, stepping back from all of it, the court ruling, the emotional interview, the surprisingly moving detour into an American talk show's group therapy session. What's the actual takeaway here? Probably this. Royal stories translate across cultures and continents most easily when they stop being about crowns and start being about the stuff everybody's family deals with in some form or another. Estrangement, wanting to fix things before it's too late, not knowing if the door's still open. That's why 5 women with zero royal expertise could sit on a couch in New York and turn a British legal ruling into one of the more genuinely touching segments of daytime television that week, because underneath the tabloid headline there was just a very human story that needed almost no translation at all. So, what do you think? Should Charles respond to Harry directly, publicly, or do you think reconciliation like this genuinely has to happen privately, away from cameras and headlines entirely, for it to actually mean anything? And honestly, which View panellist do you think nailed the reaction best? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because we're genuinely curious where you land on this one. Before we wrap up, if you had fun following us down this particular royal rabbit hole, do us a favour and subscribe to Royal Truth Desk if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss it next time a story like this one crosses over somewhere completely unexpected. If you're already part of the crew, drop a like, share this with whoever in your group chat has strong opinions about both royal drama and daytime TV. And let us know in the comments what other unlikely royal crossover moment you want us covering next. And here's the thought we'll leave you with tonight. Sometimes the most honest royal commentary doesn't come from a palace correspondent in a blazer. It comes from someone on a couch, off script, just recognizing a familiar kind of hurt when they see it. Stay curious, stay a little soft-hearted about the human stuff buried inside all this royal chaos, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching Royal Truth Desk.